Good afternoon and welcome to the latest of the Posturite webinars. Delighted to say that we've got a webinar on activity and working today. So the presentation we're going to have is Stand Up to Sedentary Working, and I'm delighted that we've got Greg and Fehmidah from Loughborough, oh, beg your pardon, yes, Leicester and Loughborough University. Greg is currently specialising in sedentary behaviour. And he's been working on this program and is here to present it to us. Dr. Munir is also, beg your pardon, heavily involved with this, and she is working with the University of Loughborough, and she specialises in the promotion of health and management of ill health and well-being. So it's going to be, I think, a very useful presentation for us all today, thinking about looking after our health. If you've got any questions throughout the presentation, there is a box on the right-hand side. Please feel free to write your questions in there, and I'm going to be pushing them to Greg and Fehmidah at the end. Please be aware, if you have any technical problems, we are recording this webinar and it is going to be available on our website afterwards. So don't worry if you have a problem, you can always drop in and listen to us in the future. So I think really without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Greg, who's going to tell us more about this interesting program. Over to you, Greg.
Thanks, Catherine. It's really great to be here today and talking to everybody about some of the interesting work we've done at the University of Leicester and Loughborough University. So like Catherine said, my name's Greg and I am currently at the University of Leicester, and I work in the promotion of our Smart Work program, which I'll get on to talk about a little bit more later on. But in brief, it's a program that's designed to encourage people to sit less and move more in the workplace. Excuse me. There we go. So just a little bit of background to the program and to the work we've been doing at both universities. People are sitting more and more in everyday life, but this is especially prevalent at work. So we get, roughly around 80% of the day, the working day is spent sitting down. This comes with a whole host of problems. So the epidemiological evidence suggests increased risks of various diseases such as cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, but also some cognitive disorders such as increased risk of depression, reduced concentration, some evidence suggesting reduced cognitive function as well, but also some problems with musculoskeletal issues, so back pain, these sorts of things. But particularly an issue, all these conditions together have shown to have a costly impact on employers. So around £30 billion to the UK economy every year, which is a huge amount of money. So the problem of sitting too long in everyday life, and especially in the workplace, is rather great. So some other evidence we've got, which is what we call experimental evidence or physiological evidence, whatever you want to call it, is basically where we get people into a laboratory setting and measure things like their bloods or fats in the blood, sugars in the bloods, whatever. So I'll briefly explain some of this and how this has added to the evidence around sitting time. So typically all these studies have a control, which is where somebody would come into a laboratory and would get them to sit for between 6 and 8 hours for the entire day. Would take regular blood samples throughout the day to measure their responses to a set meal. Okay, so this would be a standard meal. It could be anything like a cheese sandwich, for example. We measure their bloods in response to them sitting all day. And then we get them to come in and say do a standing condition where we'd get them to stand for between 2 and 5 minutes every 20 to 30 minutes. So in total throughout the day, that's a 30 to 60 minute reduction in prolonged sitting by replacing that time with standing. We'd also do the same another time, but instead of the standing breaks, we'd do a walking break or light activity break. And there's also some evidence that have done, instead of the walking breaks, a simple resistance exercise break. So for the 2 to 5 minutes every 20 to 30 minutes, we would get the participant to do light resistance exercises. So this is something like a calf raising, glute contractions, or simple mini squats or something like that. These are things that could be done in the workplace. And what this has shown, the standing condition compared to when you're sitting down, we see between a 10 to 40% reduction in glucose, so that's your blood sugar. We see reduction in fatigue, improvements in back pain complaints, and a slight reduction in blood pressure. Also, what's important to note is these impacts are greater in people with poorer health. Typically the glucose reduction, so the upwards of 40% typically are people who have not got good glucose control in the first place. These are people, for example, with high risk of developing type 2 diabetes or with type 2 diabetes. The light activity breaks again show a reduction in glucose. This time we see a reduction in fats in the blood, so this is something like triglycerides, or triglycerides mainly, and also a slight reduction in blood pressure as well. But what's interesting as well, the simple resistance exercises show quite a large reduction in glucose, but an even larger reduction in the fats in our blood, so these are the triglycerides, as well as blood pressure and fatigue. Just interesting to note that the evidence is a bit more restricted on the simple resistance exercises. Less studies have actually implemented them, so just take these with a bit more of a pinch of salt, but I find these results rather interesting. So in response to this evidence, the researchers at Loughborough University and University of Leicester put together a cluster randomized control trial looking at reducing sitting in the workplace in office workers in University Hospitals of Leicester NHS Trust. So what the researchers did was they aimed to reduce sitting time in these employers by recruiting office-based workers within University Hospitals Leicester NHS Trust. And at baseline, they took a series of measurements which measured their sitting and underlying health. These were then randomized in their offices or team to either the smart work intervention, which I'll go on to explain a bit more in a moment, or act as a control where they'd just have their usual practice, whatever they usually did. The office teams were then measured again at 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months. So what the actual intervention looked like, it was a multi-component intervention focused on reducing total sitting time at work and breaking a prolonged bout of sitting in the workplace. So they were, all staff in the intervention group were invited to attend a face-to-face education workshop, which outlined lots of the information I've just told you, which around the impact of sitting on health and the benefits of reducing sitting and breaking up sitting. They received feedback on the time they spent sitting from the device that they wore for 7 days. This is the device that we attach to the thigh, which measures sitting and movement. And they could use this to then set goals going forward for their total sitting time and breaking sitting time. At the end of the workshop, they received a leaflet that reinforced these key messages and a booklet around action planning and goal setting and that sort of stuff. A few weeks later, they were given the choice of a height adjustable workstation within the set budget of the study, which was either an electronic desk or a platform in which they put on their existing desk. They were given guidance on how to use this effectively as well. We wanted staff to track their own sitting time, so they were provided with what I've just put on the screen there, the Dharma cushion, which you could put on your chair and it would measure how long you were sitting on it, and it could give you alerts to reduce your prolonged sitting time. And finally, there was opportunities at the 3, 6, and 12 months to receive feedback again from the devices they were wearing at those times to check how they were doing in terms of their goals. And they were able to review this with members of the study team as well. So the main results from the study were very, very promising, and the team did a great job getting this published in a really prestigious journal, the British Medical Journal. And So the results after 12 months showed a really substantial reduction in total sitting time at work. So that was 83 minutes per day reduction. This was alongside improvements in job performance, improvements in some musculoskeletal issues, as well as reduced sickness presenteeism and increased work engagement, as well as improvements in energy and fatigue and quality of life. So really promising results from the study. What I find particularly interesting as well is if you go into the study yourself, you can access it online. It's freely available online. But if you see the reduction from 3, 6, and 12 months, the reductions in sitting time actually improve throughout the intervention, which to me show that the intervention itself was really effective and was able to be maintained throughout, which is really key, because often you get an intervention that's successful in the first instance, but is not maintainable, but this was. Also, the program was found to be cost saving. So for every £1 spent on the program, there was £4 returned in benefit. So yeah, it was actually cost saving. There's also, we published a cost effectiveness paper as well. So if you're interested, feel free to get in contact and we can give you the link to that as well. There was also some qualitative results from the study, which is effective, the feedback from the participants themselves. So I won't read you what it says here. Feel free to check it out yourselves. But basically, it was very well received from the participants themselves. They found real noticeable benefits for themselves. And what's interesting is the employees within University Hospitals of Leicester were very keen for it to become part of their mandatory training within the trust. So that's something we're still working to get through. As you can imagine, during the current times, it's quite difficult to get into the NHS, but it's something we're looking to carry on doing. The feedback was really, really positive. So this just leads me on to show what we've developed as a result of the study. We want as many people to access the resources, the successful resources as possible. So what the research team did was develop a freely available online resource kit for all employees to access that will enable people to sit less and move more in the workplace. So the website link is popped here, and you'll be able to have access after the webinar as well. So all you have to do is pop onto the website. You just need to put in a few details and you get access to all the resources completely free. And I'll just run you through what the resources are exactly. So altogether, we've got a manager's toolkit, a workplace champions toolkit, and an individual toolkit. And they're quite self-explanatory what they are, but I'll take you through in detail what each person's role would be. And we do suggest if an organization wants to implement this program effectively, or as effectively as possible, it's good to have buy-in from all three areas here. But if it is just an individual wanting to benefit, then those resources are there, and you don't have any requirement to be in part of a larger organization, for example. You can just access it on your own as well. So the manager's role really is to plan the implementation of the program. It's also really important that they try and act as best they can as a role model of the behavior, so they actually implemented the changes themselves. They obviously have the power to change the environment, so this could be something as simple as changing the locations of, say, your bins, for example. You could change that, which increases movement throughout the office, or it could be something as substantial as putting in standing desks throughout the entire organization. But it's their job to drive this change in the environment. We think it's really good to get the manager to commit to this change. So on the website, I'll show you in a second, we've created a pledge for them that they're able to sign. It's more of a kind of symbolic gesture that they are committed to the change in the environment and the whole organization. And there's resources for them to report on the progress of the program. So on the manager's resources, you'll see something like this. So you've got a business case which outlines how this program can be effective for the business, and then all the other things that I've explained. So the plan for the organization, the pledge that they can sign, how to model their behavior, how to change the environment, and how to report on the program itself. So the champion role, the workplace champion role, I think arguably is the most important. So these can be anybody within the organization, but they're responsible for launching the program and driving it throughout the organization in conjunction with the manager. We've put all the resources online for this. So for example, the monthly motivational emails that we suggest are all pre-made on the website. So all you need to do is go on, have a look at the emails and copy and paste it and ping it out to all your employees, and jobs are good and really. So you can coordinate individual and group challenges. They're all on the website for you as well. We suggest you facilitate catch-up sessions to discuss any barriers or any things that are facilitating change in the workplace. And again, these are outlined online. And again, really important that you try and role model the behavior yourself. So when you go on the website, you'll see this under the Workplace Champions section. So it explains briefly what your role is. Gets you access to some posters if you want to pop those around the office. Then they can be done to remind people to get up and move more. The emails there, like I said, are all there for you. There's some challenges, and obviously in the current circumstance of us all working from home, lots of this can still be done from home. So the challenge is, it could be a good way for you to keep linking with all your colleagues to put a group challenge together, for example. I mean, one of the challenges is walking from Land's End to John O'Groats. So you could do that easily at home, and you can feel that sense of camaraderie again, even from your own home, which would be lovely as well. Group catch-up sessions and organizational plan along with the management. And then the individual role, which is what I like as well, because I think what's so great is that people can benefit from this on their own if required, if the organization is not going to buy in. So all you really need to do is engage with the resources. They're all there for you, and you're freely able to access any of it. But also you can engage with the champions, engage with the managers as well. This is what you'll see as an individual. If you want to go on the individual section, there's an education session, which is all based off the evidence that I outlined, which will take you around half an hour to work your way through. You can work through it as many times as you'd like. You can calculate your sitting time, set goals, access the posters as the Workplace Champions can do as well. The same challenges that the Workplace Champions access. Some top tips to reduce your sitting time, some suggested exercises you can do. There's a few apps always change. There's so many out there, but these are a few that you could get started with, and some case studies. We're constantly trying to add to this section as well, so there will be things added. So keep an eye out and see what's coming. So that's everything I've outlined of the program. It would be really great if we could take some questions from you guys. Myself and Fehmidah are here to answer any questions you have around the studies I've outlined, or health and well-being in the workplace more generally. So thank you. Cheers.
Greg, that was brilliant actually, and although I do a lot of sit stand, as people would know, there was bits in there that I was completely unaware of, so you learn something. Never too old to learn something, so thank you for that.
Thanks.
One of the things that I want to know is, why is it free? Seems like an awful good resource to get something for nothing.
Yeah, it's a great question, Fehmidah. It's a very simple answer, really. It's as universities, we're measured on our impact of our research. So I always tell people there's no point us doing any research if it's not going to benefit people in the real world. So this is our way of doing that. And universities, like I say, we're measured on our impact of our research. So we're trying to get that out there. And the best way to do that is to make it free. So each university has provided funding for us to create this website and maintain it. And what we're really doing is trying to measure the engagement with the website to see how many people we're reaching with our research and trying to benefit them that way. So that's why it's free, really. It's a way of us to show our impact of our research, which in the long term enables us to access more research funding through research bodies, because we can demonstrate our impact in the real world, if that makes sense.
No, that's great, and I think most people win on that one, don't they? So that's great. Got a couple of questions coming in. Are there automatic on-screen reminders to stand?
There are some available, and they'll be listed on that apps section of the individual resources. I can't remember off the top of my head what they're called. I think, Fehmidah, I'm not sure if you know, but I'm pretty sure there's some Google Chrome extensions, for example, that you can download to any computer that will do it for you. But there's nothing specific on the website, but there will be links to the apps, as it were.
Yes, I think there are some. You just have to look through the lists and find which one it is. I'm afraid I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, there's definitely some Google Chrome extensions that I've used
There
in the
are,
past.
yeah.
But they're out there. Some will be listed on the apps list on the individual resources. So that would be where I'd start.
Excellent. Okay. Got a question. What were the key interventions that staff managed to sustain?
Do you want me to go for that one?
Yeah, Fehmidah, you take that one. Yeah.
So the key intervention was to raise the desk and stand regularly. So doing that throughout the day. And what we found was, because it was a 12-month intervention, that was sustained as they slowly, incrementally did that over the 12 months, rather than going straight into it and trying to stand quite often when they've not done it before. They've gone from sedentary to standing. We found that self-monitoring how much they stood, how often they stood, was really effective. So that again was so providing themselves with feedback on their standing time through using some of these apps and the cushion really helped them to sustain that behavior. Other things were around changing the way they work, so doing that quite gradually again to try and fit it in around standing. So we all know that, I mean, I've done it myself in the past, where you get very excited about standing, you do it for a short while and then you stop. But it's about changing the way you work to fit in around standing. So some of the things people were talking about with each other and encouraging each other to do was perhaps standing first thing in the morning when you're looking at your emails, and then again a little bit later when you're looking at your emails again, to stand up and do that, to stand up when you're taking phone calls, to stand up when you're perhaps wanting to write something down very quickly. So those kind of intervention prompts were really useful to them to kind of sustain their behavior. One of the other things we did, which was actually part of the intervention as opposed to kind of real world life through our website, is that we did give them feedback on things like their blood pressure and other measurements that were quite useful to them, to kind of see how those improved, and their glucose levels too, how they improved over the length of the intervention, which really helped them to understand the benefits. And I think that's quite useful.
Thank you very much. I've got a really interesting one. I've got a gentleman who's come and said he's disabled and he's finding moving from sitting to standing very painful. Any tips? And I mean, I would certainly be interested with my physio hat on as to whether sort of upper limb exercise and other exercises have been investigated to have similar benefits.
Yeah, I can take that one, Fehmidah. So that's a really interesting point, actually, and it's probably not looked at enough. But there is some really interesting work done at the University of Leicester. Actually, one of my colleagues has looked at upper body exercises in a way to mimic breaking sitting time. They're actually doing some work now in people with diabetic foot complications, because they are advised by medics not to weight bear. But obviously we're then telling people, particularly in that group, that they shouldn't be sitting too long. So it's a very difficult situation. But yeah, so they've done some research. So some of the experimental work I explained before, when we were taking regular bloods throughout the day and testing the effect of breaking sitting, what we did in that circumstance was we broke sitting with light arm ergometry, so that's arm cycling, and those results were really promising. So they showed as significant effects in reducing blood glucose and those sorts of things, so reducing our blood sugar, as the breaking sitting in terms of the upright movement that we talked about. So the evidence is certainly growing, And I would suggest that would be one way to look at it. So these upright, so an arm ergometer, so an arm cycling thing, you can get a desktop one. The difficulty with it is you can't work quite as well alongside it. So I don't know any of evidence looking at trying to make people enable people to work alongside breaking sitting time in these groups who are unable to break sitting time. But you can certainly, i.e., break non-active sedentary time by upright exercises, and you can get the same benefits. Just trying to marry it alongside your work may be slightly more difficult. But yeah, I hope that answers the question.
No, thank you. I think that is helpful. Do you think that the results from the research groups, when people knew they were being measured, would be different from an office where people aren't being measured, they're just putting this in as a part of a program?
Shall I take this one?
Fehmidah, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I think there always will be the case that when people are being measured, that it will make a difference then when you're just implementing it as part of a program. However, and this is quite a big however, what we found in our study was that one of the biggest influences of breaking up your sitting time was the support of colleagues that were also breaking up their sitting time in the same room. So there was quite a lot of social influence going on. That wasn't part of our intervention in the sense that although we clustered people, so officers were doing it together, we hadn't really given it much consideration in our kind of objectives. So when we found that through our interviews, we did some interviews and some questionnaires to see what motivated people kind of sustaining that behaviour change. Although the feedback from the measures was one of them, this was also very much a big influencer. So, and what we know from research done on kind of colleague support and peer support, it can be a really good influence on workers changing their behaviour. And so I think the website's designed to kind of promote those kind of influences, kind of getting a group organisational approach to kind of changing people's attitudes and behaviours to sitting less.
Yeah, exactly. Can I add as well, just with the design of the study, in the sense that we obviously have the control group as well as the experimental group. So the control group, that's sort of one of the reasons we do studies in that way, because the control group are in some respects are still expected to change the behaviour somewhat because they are aware of the measurement going on. So it's important to measure it against the control group, and that was where we got the change compared to the control. There was an improvement in the intervention group compared to the control group, if that makes sense.
Yes, because the control group also got feedback at the same time as the intervention group did, but they didn't have the actual intervention. So yes, that's a valid point.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got a very practical question. How long will this resource be available for if people start to use it?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's no we've got no plans to change the accessibility of the resource as it is now. Fehmidah, I don't know if you want to add to that.
No, I think that's probably about right. I think we will continue to adapt and add resources to our website over time.
Okay, that's great. I think this is going to have to be the last question, sadly. There has been some research on negative impact of standing. So, I mean, it'd be interesting if you found any negative impacts. And from a result of that, do you think there's a good ratio how often people should sit stand for?
Shall I take that?
Yeah, go ahead, Fehmidah. Yeah.
Yeah. So the evidence suggests it's the same, that if you sit for too long, and if you sit for a very long period of time, it's bad for your health. And equally, if you stand for too long, for very long periods of time, that's also bad for your health. So what the evidence suggests is not the actual standing for long periods, it's the transitions, the bouts of going from sitting to standing regularly. So it's the movement of that body that makes the difference.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah.
Okay. Brilliant. Well, I've just got one thing that somebody has posted to say that Outstanding has a Google Chrome extension. I think that was to do with the prompts. I'm a bit of a technophobe, so I'm not sure, for those people that aren't technophobes, that might make sense to you. We will put all the questions on the website, and what we might do, if you don't mind, is we'll send you the questions we haven't managed to get to, and if you could just jot a few answers down, and then we can pop them with the recording, that would be really helpful.
No problem.
So I really just want to say thank you so much for talking us through that today. I think that's been really useful. As I said, you know, I live and breathe this quite a lot, and I learned something today. So thank you very much for that. And I think it's great we've got that resource out there that people can sort of engage with. I think particularly since work practices are going to change following this particular crisis. And I think a lot more people will need to be responsible for their own health and movement during the day. So I think these things will be really, really good for us.
Yeah, I was going to add to that actually. So just very briefly, like the fact that it's out there now and we can utilize it from home, and it's there for people to use, because in the home environment it's so different. People often have pretty bad setups for working, to be honest, don't they, from home? So this could be something that enables them to work better at home and move more, because it's very easy to just sit and do nothing at home.
Yeah, I think that's great. And actually, from my point of view, we've got a few questions coming up saying about home working. I've actually produced a few resources on our website as to how one can try and improve setup even in a home situation. So I think maybe using those and along with this program could really make a benefit to us in certainly the next 3 weeks and whatever else is to come. So
Absolutely.
Greg and Fehmidah for their brilliant presentation and their help today, and wish everybody an enjoyable weekend and a safe onward passage towards we get back to some sort of normality. So thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you. Bye.